The galaxy had been under the rule of alien tyrants for centuries, their iron grip choking the life out of countless worlds. They were powerful, cruel, and utterly ruthless. Every planet they conquered was forced to submit to their will. Entire populations were enslaved, their resources drained to fuel the tyrants' endless wars. The people of these worlds lived in fear, knowing that to resist would mean certain death. For them, there was no hope, no escape. The alien overlords seemed unstoppable, their warships towering over the stars like dark shadows, dominating everything they touched. On every planet, whispers of rebellion began to grow, but they were always crushed before they could gain any momentum. The tyrants' forces were vast, with fleets of ships that could obliterate entire civilizations in the blink of an eye. The galaxy was a cold, dark place, and humanity, a relatively young species, had been swept up in the chaos. For years, they had lived under the watchful eyes of these alien overlords, their colonies scattered and vulnerable. But despite the fear that gripped them, there were some who refused to give in. In the darkest corners of the galaxy, hidden far from the tyrants' prying eyes, humanity was making a silent stand. They were not strong enough to take on the aliens head-to-head, not yet, but they were clever. They were resourceful. For years, they had been quietly building something that could change the tide of the war. In secret space yards, human engineers worked tirelessly to design a warship unlike anything the tyrants had ever seen. It was small compared to the massive ships of the aliens, but it was fast, deadly, and packed with the latest human technology. It would be the symbol of resistance, a message to the alien tyrants that humanity was not weak, and they would not be enslaved forever. But the tyrants were not blind. They had eyes and ears everywhere, and the moment the humans started building their warship, their spies began to notice. The alien overlords did not take kindly to any form of defiance. They had destroyed countless civilizations that dared to challenge their rule. But they had underestimated humanity. They thought they had nothing to fear from a species so young, a species that had yet to prove its strength in the galaxy. They had seen the humans as nothing more than a nuisance, something to be dealt with once their empire was secure. They never imagined that one small, defiant species could pose a real threat to their power. As the humans worked in secret, the galaxy continued to suffer under the tyrants' rule. Planets burned, cities were destroyed, and millions of innocent lives were lost. The tyrants cared nothing for the suffering of the weak. To them, the galaxy was a playground, and the weaker species were nothing more than tools to be used and discarded. Their forces stretched across the stars, each planet a stepping stone in their quest for total domination. But on one world, deep in the heart of human space, something was changing. The people there, oppressed and frightened, began to see a glimmer of hope. News spread that humanity's first warship had been completed. The news was met with disbelief at first, but slowly it began to spark something deep inside the hearts of the people. The stories of the tyrants' cruelty had created a spark of rebellion in them. And now, with the arrival of the warship, that spark was growing into a flame. People who had once been too afraid to speak out began to whisper of a future without the tyrants' rule. They dreamed of a time when they could live free, no longer under the shadow of fear and oppression. The warship, now ready for battle, was humanity's last hope. It was the culmination of years of hard work, of secret meetings and hidden projects. It was a weapon, yes, but it was also a symbol of defiance, of hope, and of humanity's unbreakable will. But the tyrants had no idea what was coming. They believed their control was absolute, that nothing could stand in their way. They were about to learn, however, that humanity was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. For the first time, a single human warship was going to face off against the might of the alien tyrants. The moment was drawing near, and with it, the chance to change the course of the galaxy forever. But it was not just the warship that gave humanity hope. It was the fire in the hearts of the people, the belief that they could no longer live as slaves. This was the beginning of something greater, something that would challenge the very foundations of the Tyrants' empire. And though the galaxy seemed dark and hopeless, one human warship was about to prove that even in the face of impossible odds, there was always a chance to fight back. The alien tyrants had ruled the stars for so long that they had grown complacent. They believed nothing could stop them. But humanity, with its fire and determination, was about to prove them wrong. The fight for the galaxy was about to begin, and no one knew how it would end. But one thing was certain. The tyrants had underestimated humanity, and that mistake would cost them everything. The quiet hum of engines echoed through the depths of space as humanity's warship prepared for its first mission. The tyranny of the alien overlords had lasted for centuries, with their fleets sweeping across the galaxy like a storm, leaving devastation in their wake. Their rule was absolute, and for those under their thumb, hope had long since become a distant memory. Yet, amidst the suffering, a small spark of rebellion had taken shape, and it was about to explode into something far more dangerous than the tyrants could have imagined. The first strike was calculated. The human warship, barely the size of an alien frigate, had been built in the deepest recesses of space, far from prying eyes. It was a testament to humanity's ingenuity, sleek, fast, and armed with technology that the aliens had never seen. Its crew, though small, was fierce. Led by Captain Area Storm, a woman who had lost everything to the tyrants, the ship was a symbol of resistance, but even she couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a military operation, it was a statement. Humanity was no longer willing to cower in fear. The colony they were targeting was a small outpost on the edge of the galaxy, overlooked by the alien tyrants but vital to human interests. It was home to thousands of civilians who had lived under the constant threat of alien domination. For years, the people of the colony had whispered about freedom. But now it was time to take action. The warship's crew had one objective: strike before the tyrants could retaliate, show them that the humans would no longer be passive. As the ship glided silently through space, Area couldn't help but feel the tension that gripped the crew. They were about to engage an enemy far stronger than they were, with no guarantee of survival. The warship's cloaking devices kept them hidden from the watchful eyes of the alien fleets, but they knew the window of opportunity would be brief. They had to strike fast and hard. The human warship finally arrived at its destination, a small alien-controlled station orbiting the colony. It was lightly defended, but even the smallest alien presence could bring the station's reinforcements down on them in an instant. The plan was simple: disable the station's communications and primary defenses, then slip away before the aliens could organize a counterattack. It wasn't a mission for glory. It was a mission to show the galaxy that humanity had teeth. With the command given, the warship launched its attack. Silent beams of energy lanced out from its hull, striking the alien station with deadly precision. The first explosion rippled through the station's outer defenses, and alarms began blaring across the station's decks. The alien forces were caught off guard, unable to react quickly enough to the surprise strike. They had underestimated the human ship, just as they had underestimated humanity itself. Captain Area watched as the alien station erupted into chaos. The small fleet of defenders scrambled to their positions, but they were too slow. Humanity's warship, darting like a shadow through the blackness of space, moved with an elegance that the alien forces could not match. Every shot fired from the warship's cannons struck its mark. The human ship's shields absorbed the few retaliatory shots that came their way, and the crew cheered at each successful strike. For a moment, they allowed themselves to feel victorious. They were making the difference, and the tyrants would soon know their names. However, the victory came at a cost. The alien forces, though unprepared, were far from weak. As the station's defenses fell, the tyrants' reinforcements were already on their way. From the depths of space, a fleet of alien warships emerged, a cloud of terror that threatened to crush the human warship before it could escape. The crew had only one choice: retreat. "Get us out of here now," Area ordered. her voice steady despite the growing pressure. The warship's engines roared to life as they activated the cloaking devices once again, vanishing into the blackness of space just as the alien fleet arrived in full force. The humans had struck, and the aliens had taken notice, but the moment of relief was fleeting. The Tyrants, though stunned by the audacity of the attack, would not rest until they had hunted down this defiant human ship. The first strike had been successful, but the war was far from over. Humanity had made its mark, and the alien tyrants were not going to forget it. They were not going to forgive it. As the human warship sailed back into the unknown, Aria stood before the crew, her eyes filled with both determination and the weight of what lay ahead. The battle had just begun. This strike had been a spark that would ignite a fire in the hearts of all those who had suffered under the tyrant's rule. The aliens had thought they were untouchable, but humanity had just proved them wrong. The stars no longer belonged to the tyrants. They were now a battleground, and humanity had just declared war. The battle raged on in the dark emptiness of space. The human warship had struck its first blow, but the alien tyrants, furious at the unexpected attack, were not going to let it go unpunished. As the warship sailed into the black, its crew had only a moment to catch their breath before the true challenge began. The tyrants had sent out their entire fleet, and they were relentless. They were not just going to chase down the human ship, they were going to destroy it. Captain Aria Storm stood at the helm, her hand steady on the controls, but her mind was racing. The strike had been successful, but it had come with a heavy price. They had destroyed one of the alien stations, but they had also made themselves a target. The alien forces were not known for mercy. The crew had done well, but now they faced their most dangerous test yet. They had to survive long enough to make it back to human space, but the alien ships were closing in fast. "Shields up," Aria commanded, her voice calm despite the chaos unfolding around them. The warship's shields flickered to life, shimmering with energy, just as a barrage of enemy fire streaked through space. The human warship rocked as it absorbed the first hit, but its shields held strong, much to the relief of the crew. The alien ships were powerful, but they were not invincible, and this human ship had been built with precision. "Bring us about," Aria shouted, watching as the alien ships closed in. They were faster than expected, and their numbers were overwhelming. But the human warship had something they didn't: agility. It darted left and right, evading the worst of the incoming fire, each move more daring than the last. The alien ships tried to surround them, but the human warship slipped through their lines like a shadow, impossible to catch. The crew worked in unison, firing back at the alien ships. Each shot that landed on an alien ship caused explosions that lit up the dark expanse of space. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their freedom. Every blast, every maneuver was a declaration of resistance against the tyranny of the alien overlords. It wasn't enough to simply survive. They had to show the galaxy that humanity was not weak. The alien ships retaliated with fury, their energy weapons scorching the void. One ship came dangerously close, its weapons ready to fire. The crew braced themselves as the target lock was engaged, but before the alien ship could strike, the human warship dove beneath it, sending a precise shot that disabled its engines. The alien ship veered off course, crashing into one of its allies. The humans had won a small victory, but there was no time to celebrate. More ships were coming. "Captain, we can't keep this up," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice strained from the intensity of the battle. "We need to get to the nearest jump point, or we're done for." Aria nodded, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. They were surrounded, but there was a narrow opening, a jump point, a shortcut through space that would take them to safety. But it was heavily guarded by the alien fleet, and they would have to fight their way through. "We make a run for it," Aria decided. "Prepare to engage full speed. Everyone, hold on tight." With a roar, the human warship shot forward, darting through the alien lines at full throttle. The alien ships tried to catch them, firing as fast as they could, but the human ship was too fast, too agile. Every time it looked like the alien ships would close in, the warship would perform a sharp turn or sudden dive, evading their shots. The crew's nerves were stretched to their limits, but they didn't give up. They fought like a family, bound by their shared goal of survival. The jump point was getting closer, but so were the alien ships. The distance between them was shrinking by the second. Aria's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. If they didn't make it to the jump point in time, they would be overwhelmed. The fate of the warship, the crew, and the entire human resistance rested on this one decision. "Get ready," Aria said, her voice tense. "We're going to make it, or we're going to die trying." The warship's engines surged forward, faster than ever before. The alien ships were hot on their tail, but the jump point was now within reach. A few more seconds, and they would be through. The crew held their breath, hoping against hope that they could make it out alive. Just as the first alien ship fired its final devastating shot, the human warship dove into the jump point, disappearing into the fabric of space. For a brief moment, everything went silent. The warship was gone, leaving only the cold, empty void behind. The alien fleet, frustrated and defeated, turned back. They had lost the human ship, this time. But they would never forget the strike, and they would never forget the message it sent. Humanity was no longer afraid. They had taken the first step in a war that would change the galaxy forever. As the warship emerged from the jump point, safe for now, Captain Aria allowed herself a moment of relief. The battle for survival was far from over, but they had won this round. And for the first time in a long time, humanity had a chance. The alien tyrants had underestimated them, and they would pay for it. "All systems green," Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice tinged with exhaustion, but also pride. "We made it, Captain." Aria looked out at the stars ahead, knowing this was just the beginning. The war was far from over, but humanity had sent a clear message to the galaxy. They were no longer victims. They were a force to be reckoned with. And the tyrants would soon learn that humans were not so easily crushed. The tide was turning. The small human warship, though battered and worn from the brutal chase, had emerged from the jump point into a new region of space, a region that was not yet under the control of the alien tyrants. But the battle was far from over. The alien fleet had been forced to retreat for now, but they would not rest until they hunted down every last trace of the human resistance. Humanity had made its mark, and the tyrants were furious. Captain Aria Storm stood in front of the view screen, watching the stars stretch ahead of them. Their small warship had just made it through the narrowest of escapes, but they were not safe yet. They had a brief window of time before the alien fleet tracked them down again. They needed to regroup, to find more ships, to prepare for the inevitable retaliation. They could not rest on this victory. They needed to press forward, to strike again. "Captain, we've got a problem," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice tight with urgency. "We've lost too much power from the engines. The jump point took more out of us than we thought. We'll need at least a few hours to repair the systems." Aria's eyes narrowed. Every moment they spent in this quiet, uncharted region of space was a risk. The longer they waited, the greater the chance of being discovered. But there was no other choice. They couldn't outrun the aliens forever. If they didn't get their ship repaired, the warship would be sitting prey for the tyrants. "Do what you can," Aria ordered. "We can't afford to waste time." As Harris and the crew worked to stabilize the ship, Aria's mind raced. The human resistance was still small, very small. They had a handful of ships, but their resources were limited. They could not take on the entire alien fleet, not yet. But the victory they had just won had proven one thing. Humanity had the will to fight back. The galaxy was not lost. There was hope, and that hope was now spreading like wildfire among the oppressed species of the galaxy. Word of the human warship's strike had already begun to circulate, and soon more and more resistance cells would rise up. They just needed time to build their forces. As the hours passed, the crew worked tirelessly, making repairs and preparing for the next stage of their mission. Aria knew that it was time to take the fight to the heart of the Tyrants' empire. If humanity could strike at the core of their power, it could cripple the aliens' hold on the galaxy. But how? They didn't have the firepower to engage the alien fleet directly. But perhaps there was another way, an opening they could exploit, something the Tyrants would never see coming. Then it came to her. The alien empire thrived on fear. It was their greatest weapon. They crushed their enemies through sheer intimidation, their massive fleets sowing terror wherever they went. But what if humanity could use that fear against them? What if they could create a diversion so massive that the Tyrants would be forced to turn on each other? Aria's mind began to form a plan. It wasn't going to be easy, and it certainly wasn't going to be safe, but it was their best shot. If they could infiltrate the alien leadership, disrupt their communication channels, sow distrust among their ranks, they could fracture the empire from within. The Tyrants ruled with an iron fist, but that fist was brittle. If humanity could strike at the heart of their power, they could start a revolution that would spread across the galaxy. "Lieutenant, I need a strategy session in 5. Aria said, her voice steady but filled with determination. As Harris and the others gathered in the warship's briefing room, Aria laid out her plan. It would take all of their remaining resources, and there was no guarantee they would succeed, but it was the only chance they had. They had to strike at the alien leadership, infiltrate their command centers, and cause enough chaos to make them question their grip on power. "This is going to take everything we have," Aria said, looking each crew member in the eye. "We are not just fighting for survival anymore. We are fighting to break the chains that have held the galaxy in darkness for so long." The crew nodded, understanding the gravity of what was at stake. They had already proven they could survive against the alien tyrants, but now they would have to become something more. They would have to be a force of change, a spark that could ignite a fire that would burn through the galaxy. "We'll need allies," Lieutenant Harris said. "We can't do this alone." "Agreed," Aria replied. "We will reach out to every resistance group, every faction that has fought the Tyrants in silence. Together, we can make them fall." As the crew prepared for the mission ahead, Aria felt a deep sense of resolve. This was their moment. The galaxy had suffered under the Tyrants' rule for far too long, but humanity had shown that it would not bend. They had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could stand tall. The battle for the galaxy was far from over. The alien Tyrants still controlled much of the galaxy, and their fleet was vast. But humanity had just shown them a glimpse of what was to come. This was only the beginning. The resistance would grow. The galaxy would rise up, and the Tyrants would learn, too late, that they had made a terrible mistake when they underestimated the will of humanity. The human warship, battered but not broken, prepared to leave the safety of the quiet region of space. They had a mission to complete, and they were ready. The stars ahead were still filled with danger, but they no longer seemed as dark as before. The spark of rebellion had been lit, and soon it would become an unstoppable blaze. The Tyrants' reign was about to end, and humanity would be the ones to end it. The moment the human warship emerged from the dark, quiet space, the galaxy seemed more alive than ever before. The Tyrants' empire still stretched across the stars, a vast and powerful force that had crushed countless civilizations under its heel. But the spark that had been ignited was no longer something the Tyrants could ignore. The humans had struck a blow, and the resistance was growing. Aria Storm knew that the warship was just one piece in a much larger puzzle. But if they could rally the galaxy's oppressed, if they could turn the tide, the stars might finally be free. Their mission to infiltrate the alien leadership was dangerous, possibly suicidal. But it was humanity's best chance. Every moment they wasted would only bring the Tyrants closer to their doorsteps. If they could destabilize the alien leadership, create a rift between the Tyrants and their commanders, It could bring the whole empire crashing down. The aliens had long relied on fear and control to maintain their dominance. But what if that fear was replaced by doubt? Captain Area Storm paced the command deck, her eyes fixed on the star chart. Their next destination was a secretive world, home to the Tyrants' inner circle, where the most powerful leaders made their decisions. A planet surrounded by layers of security, cloaked in mystery, and steeped in terror. It was a place where the Tyrants felt invulnerable. The mission would be to slip in, find the heart of their command structure, and sow the seeds of chaos. The human warship would be their entry point, but it was only a small fraction of what was required. "We can't afford to fail," Aria said, turning to her crew. "This is the moment, the one that could change everything." Her voice was resolute, though she could feel the weight of the situation. They were about to face something far bigger than they had before. They had made their mark with the initial strike, but the Tyrants were not fools. They would have already started preparing for retaliation. The humans had taken a gamble, a strike against a much larger, far more powerful enemy. Now it was time to take the next step. The plan was simple in its essence. The warship would infiltrate the hidden stronghold, using its cloaking technology to bypass the tightest defenses. Once inside, they would split into teams, disabling the alien command's ability to communicate. If they could get access to their central network, they would broadcast the truth across the galaxy, showing the alien Tyrants as the fragile and fearful beings they were. If the humans could expose their leaders, they could shatter the illusion of invincibility that held the Tyrants together. But the risks were immense. If they were discovered, the wrath of the entire alien fleet would descend upon them in an instant. There was no second chance. This mission, if successful, could weaken the Tyrants' grip, forcing them to fight on multiple fronts: internal unrest and external resistance. But if they failed, humanity's rebellion would be crushed in an instant. As the warship neared the alien stronghold, tension gripped the crew. The ship's engines hummed steadily, its cloaking technology keeping them hidden from any would-be pursuers. Captain Aria stood at the helm, watching as the destination loomed ahead. "We're close," she said, her voice steady. "Prepare for the infiltration." The plan was set into motion. The warship entered the alien stronghold system, unseen by the array of patrol ships and defenses that surrounded the planet. Aria's heart pounded in her chest as the crew scrambled to execute their roles. The first phase was simple, disabling the external defenses to prevent any immediate alarms. A few well-placed shots from the warship's weapons disabled a key communications relay, buying them precious moments before they had to make their next move. Then came the hardest part. In small teams, the crew would infiltrate the planet's surface, taking covert routes into the alien command center. Each team had specific objectives, ranging from disrupting the alien leadership's communication network to planting the seeds of rebellion among the alien factions that made up the Empire's core. Aria led the team that would get to the central control station. She knew this mission could be a one-way trip, but she couldn't afford to show fear. Her crew was depending on her, and if she faltered now, they would all pay the price. She couldn't let that happen. As the team descended into the heart of the stronghold, everything seemed eerily quiet. The alien empire, with its massive warships and countless fleets, now seemed far more fragile than before. The control station was a sprawling complex, surrounded by high-tech defenses and guarded by a force of alien soldiers. But with their training and stealth, humanity's team moved unseen through the shadows, bypassing security systems and eliminating threats before they could raise alarms. The command center was ahead, a massive structure that looked like it was made from solid stone, though it was full of advanced alien technology. Aria and her team infiltrated it, using a combination of human ingenuity and alien tech they had stolen from previous battles. They'd breached the station's central hub, quickly planting the virus that would cripple the alien communications network. Within moments, their actions would broadcast the truth to the galaxy, revealing the Tyrants' cracks, their internal strife, and most importantly, their fear. As Aria's team set the final charges, an alarm sounded. The station's security had detected the breach. Within seconds, the alien forces began swarming through the corridors. Aria's heart raced. The escape plan was their only hope now. They had done their part. They had exposed the alien leader's weaknesses. But now, they would have to fight their way out. "Move!" Aria shouted, drawing her weapon as the alien soldiers closed in. The warship was still waiting, cloaked, but it would only be able to hold position for so long before they would need a fast escape. The team sprinted back toward the extraction point, the echoes of pursuing footsteps growing louder with each passing second. The final battle was intense. The alien soldiers fought hard to recapture the station, but the humans, though outnumbered, fought with everything they had. The fire of resistance burned bright in their hearts. This was their moment, not just to survive, but to change the galaxy forever. As Aria and her team boarded the warship, the planet's sky lit up with the sounds of explosions. The human crew had made it out, just as the station began to crumble. The communication network was down. The truth about the alien tyrants was spreading across the galaxy, and there was no stopping it now. As the warship jumped to safety, the crew could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But even as they fled, Aria knew the war was far from over. The tyrants would come for them. The battle for the galaxy was only beginning, and humanity was no longer just surviving. They were fighting back, and the alien empire was about to learn that the stars no longer belonged to them. Humanity had made its stand, and now they would finish what they had started. The fire of rebellion had been lit, and it would burn across the galaxy, unstoppable, until every chain had been broken. The war had begun, and humanity was leading the charge.